Well, good evening and welcome to About the Valley. My guest tonight is Craig Maxim of Northbridge Continuity, Family Continuity.
Exactly. Family continuity programs in
Yep.
Northbridge here.
And if you haven't, you're right on Church Street.
Correct.
In the ERA building, is it?
It is the RA building. We moved
Yeah.
there in 2006. We were actually at 100 Main Street, right across from the mills before that, and
Oh.
moved over in 2006 at that point
Okay,
in time.
100, that's the former cafeteria?
It is. The cafeteria across over from the mills right next to the
Yeah,
community center.
Henry Lane's office.
Yes, yes.
So you needed more room.
We did need more room. We were doing expansion at that time. Otherwise, it was a great site to be at 100 Main, but we needed to.
We actually looked at moving into there with the studio at one time.
I do recall that. I remember getting nervous.
Well, in fact, Dennis Latour said, I really can't commit to you because there's a possibility someone's going to rent all this space. And we ended up going down on across from the chiropractor on 122. But then this opportunity came. This has worked out great. But
Sorry, I
anyway,
didn't mean to take over that space, but it was a great spot for us
yeah,
downtown.
it has worked out for you. And how long have you been in town now?
The agency itself has been in town, oh gosh, long before I was in town. I've been in
Oh.
town since 1984. The agency, Family Continuity, is part of a larger part of an agency where we have offices in eastern Massachusetts. So the Whitensville was our western frontier.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. And so we that office was established probably in the early 1990s, actually, at 100 Main Street before it moved over to 76 Church Street.
Oh, but
So-
you weren't working for him at the time.
I was not. I was not working for them at the time. I moved to town. I was doing some work out other parts of the state, and this opportunity came to sort of be involved and really at ground level with family continuity, because it was a very smaller office at that point in time, and it sort of had
And a nice short commute.
a very short commute. I think it's 1.2 miles if I calculate it correct. So so it's worked out real nicely for myself and the family for sure. So.
But it's strange that I've been involved in town politics for many years, and I've been in town all my life. It's be 73 years coming up, and I never knew about it. So you're kind of a quiet. You don't blow your horn a lot.
We don't, and here's the opportunity to sort of blow our horn a little
that's
bit.
why I'm glad to have you on.
And
To let
I
people
think
know
that
you.
I think it is sort of something that I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think there's a lot of folks that, again, regarding mental health or substance use issues and those kinds of things. It's been sort of a stigma that sort of goes along
Right.
with that, and I think there is that quiet piece that sort of goes along that. But over the last 15 so 20 years, we've been involved in a lot of initiatives that are involved ourselves with the police departments, the school systems, our medical practices, whether it be Tri-River or Tri-County, that we're sort of embedding ourselves in a lot of the school systems now. So it's not just the little spot on Church Street.
Right.
It's really sort of branched out into other avenues. So
But what you do is you support people who have addiction problems, and you help them to get out of their situation, right?
right. Family Continuity is an outpatient mental health service.
Yep.
It provides services for mental health issues, substance use issues, and that's where the nucleus is sort of like your typical going in to see a therapist and then being able to sort of meet on a weekly basis, but it's really grown beyond that. And we put therapists in high schools, middle schools, doctors' offices, and now we're working a lot with the local police departments and being able to provide services. So it's really sort of gone beyond that because the need is there.
Right.
And the stigma is sort of starting to come down, but I think that's so we're sort of hidden, but we're involved in all of those kind of services. So it's a really sort of again the availability and the accessibility for people to get those services and not be like, oh, I'm going into that spot on Church Street.
Right.
They're going to the doctor's offices. They're in the school. They're at the so there's a lot of different ways to be able to sort
I
of
think
work
you
with
hit
that.
on an important factor that they think it's worse now than ever. I think it's no worse now than it was before. It's just that we didn't recognize it. You didn't do anything about it, so they just went on, not noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the way to go.
No, absolutely not. I think it's hitting it on, being able to sort of address the issues, and I think of school teachers, guidance counselors, all
Right.
those folks. they're there to educate folks.
Yes.
And then all these other kinds of things impede that, and then it sort of takes away from their ability to sort of be able to do their own jobs. And likewise with our local police, who are really there to protect us
Right.
and really sort of working with the community and being able to sort of help. And I mean, the job is really to help and assist. And again, it's like called out into other kinds of things that they're not trained for or not necessarily working for, and they've been a great partner as well in terms of being able to sort of provide those kind of services to folks that they encounter. So it's really gone beyond like somebody having to call and say, yes, I'd like to see somebody. It's like the community sort of saying, hey, maybe there's this other agency to hear.
This is something you want to look into. And I think in the past that they were just a problem. They were a troublemaker or something. And there's a reason for it. People just aren't automatically troublemakers. People just aren't automatically thieves. In a lot of cases, they have no alternative. And you recognize that and try and help them get out of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's, again, it's looking at the options. They grew up with what they know.
Right.
They grew up, it's again a survival
Yes.
skill. And it's like, you know what? They do those for a reason. And the fact is, you really want to work with them around, it's beyond survival. You want to learn to live. And I think you want to learn to live, and you want to learn to live, it means working. And again, there's some self-worth that comes with that. There's some things that sort of come with that. It's sort of like they've never necessarily felt that before, and they did what they needed to do for a reason. And that could be a lot of different reasons, whether it's historical in terms of family stuff or family issues that have come up, but it's also really around, again, their own self-worth. It's been, damaged in some ways, and they need to sort of be able to sort of grow and recognize the skills and talents and potential that they have that it's never necessarily been recognized.
Right. We saw in the past, we found out that if you gave someone a chance to get a good job, to do something worthwhile, their self-esteem goes up and they feel better about themselves. And
There's a place for everybody to work.
yes,
There really is, and I think that's the part that builds, and then it continues to build, and it builds on their self-worth, and then, again, it builds on their sort of efficacy in terms of moving on and
Right.
being able to sort of be self-sustaining in a lot
we
of ways.
think, well, they don't work because they're lazy. No, they're probably not working because they just haven't found that right position that makes them feel better about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's sort of, and it's finding or having that explore what those possibilities are. They've never had that experience of
Right.
like looking at like, well, maybe I'm good at this, but I don't really know because they haven't been exposed to it. So it's like I've only been exposed to X, Y, but never about Z. And you know what? Z is it. It's sort of like they need to be able to sort of look at like what are the possibilities that they have for themselves in terms of what's that right niche, and they just haven't had the pathway or the support in order to do that.
And we got to get into. Jeannie would kill me if we don't mention the fact she is doing that.
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
Ed Hub down there in the chamber, which is something altogether new for chambers to do. But it's a great program because it helps businesses because they need employees, and giving people back their self-esteem by showing them a job that they really like. And she's working with you on that now.
Well, we talked. We had some initial conversation. We said we got to circle around back to this because again, through the foundation, they're being able to sort of provide some training for folks that have had periods of incarceration and all. And there's like they're just re-entering it, and they're loving the fact that they're working.
Yes.
But it's like, or that they're getting the skills, but they don't have the self-confidence because it's been missing for so long. They've never gotten that. When I think of individuals that, when I think of any individual that succeeds, there's a certain amount of resiliency. We all go through trauma. We all go through issues in our life. What makes us bounce back and sort of do that? And a lot of folks that have been through incarceration or criminal history, that sort of stems from stuff from the past. Prior to that, whether it's family issues or whatever those, and it's like, what are the key factors and what are the things that sort of help them to be resilient, bounce back, and be able to sort of move forward and do some things. And it's like there's lack, but you start individually talking to them. There's like, oh, it was this person at the school. It was this person, an uncle. It was some other individual, natural supports, and not necessarily a mental health professional, but it's like people in the community. And here we have the chamber sort of becoming one of those factors that becomes a factor of resiliency and sort of getting the support that they need, and really looking at building up some of those soft skills that they need in terms of work. It's like it's not just about the trade and they're learning it, but it's all about they haven't had the experience of like, hi, nice to meet you, sort of shake your hand and sort of have that
Right.
sort of dialogue with folks.
Yep.
It's like it's not been there. So I think there's a lot of work to be done with that, and I applaud the chamber in doing that, and I look forward to our continue to work together, because the chamber has been a great partner in a lot of the work that we do.
In a lot of cases, they've been told all their life that they're not worth anything, they can't do anything, that they don't know how to do that, or they're just not scholastically capable. Anyway, Jeannie told me, these people are coming in, they're phenomenal in math. But when they were in school, they were horrible. But when they see a reason for it, they just excel. And that's what you're saying, it's part of the problem with these people. They get into the addiction because they don't have any self-esteem, because they were probably told all their life, maybe by parents, by family, or even by teachers, that they had no value.
Well, I think they got the message, whether it was explicitly expressed. That's
Right.
the internal message that they got, and I think that they realized. I think that they need to have that sort of confidence. Like, where does that come from? If someone sort of said to me, "Where does that come from?" It's like, okay, I can think back to my family. I can think about sort of things that's come to me that have helped me be resilient. And
Right.
and other folks, that's more of a struggle. It's like, my dad wasn't there, or my mom wasn't there, or there's been illness in the family. It doesn't even have to be sort of, addiction. It could be a physical ailment that sort of occurred in the family that sort of caused dad to be hospital. It's all sorts of reasons that might play into that. So it's like, it's sort of say it's all one thing. It's not. But I think it's about building their skills, building the self-confidence, building the self-worth in terms of being able to do that. And who doesn't feel good when they do a good job and they get a paycheck?
Right.
And I think that's an important piece. And I think, again, the addiction piece of it is like, I think addiction is turned to as a coping mechanism to deal with other kinds of things. And they learned that at an early age. They didn't know what to do. There was no one to teach them, like, this is what you do to cope with certain things. So they turn to what is available, what they've become accustomed to. And now it's really relearning, what are my coping skills? How do I deal with these kinds of things? It doesn't have to be drugs. It doesn't have to be alcohol. And what are the kinds of things that we do? Which I think is, again, one of the programs that we started recently, which is NOAH, which is No One Walks Alone. It's a new
Yes.
program that's on Spring Street. Unfortunately, our grand opening was a little bit skewed with the COVID situation, but it's a great building. It's where Catholic Charities used to be, with a whole renovation of the building, and it's really run by those that are in recovery. They've walked the walk, they've talked the talk. There's local folks that have battled addiction, overcome addiction, and are there to sort of support those that are in the midst of addiction.
They're the ones running the program
They
now.
are there. They're running. A requirement for their employment is that they're in a period of recovery, that they've gone through a period of not using drugs, not using alcohol, go to a training program, they're supervised, they have to go through an internship. So it's not like you should just walk in the door and sort of want to be that. Although we have volunteer opportunities,
Right.
again, for folks coming in that's like new to recovery, new to sort of like letting go of drugs or alcohol, and they'll be answering the phones, or they'll be doing something like that just to build that soft skills in terms of being to be employable at some point. So it's like, and it's a social place. The idea of it is like, you know what? On a Friday afternoon after work, where am I going to go? I don't want to do drugs. I don't want to do alcohol. I'm not going to the bar. I'm not going. I want to go watch a football game, and there's a place to do it. It's like a social piece too. We got pool tables, we got ping pong, we got.
Oh.
But the fact is, COVID has sort of stifled that a little bit right now. But we're
Yep.
looking forward to the time when those doors are opened and we're able to sort of do some of that work. And that, again, it's a social, it's vocational, it's really around support of individuals, and it's run by the members, and it's run by those who are in recovery.
Has the COVID caused you a problem now with being able to handle? And if they were, like you say, they had a place to go. Now they don't have it because and it's not anything you can control.
Correct. We have I think what was the timing of it, just as we were getting to open, so we never really got to that place of like fully opening. We just got it furnished, we got it sort of set up, and then boom, it sort of happened. So a lot of what we've been doing is a lot of Zoom meetings, what everybody else is doing in terms of Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
But the thing about addiction, what addiction loves and gets a hold on people is isolation.
Right.
And that's what COVID has really done. It's really isolated people. So then again, the addiction becomes stronger. It's still the opiate addiction. You're just not here. There's nobody there. The overdoses continue.
Right.
There's nobody there that's, a peer or somebody else that's there that, oh, something happened, Narcan. there's nobody there to sort of do that. So there's a lot more that we're going to see the ramifications of that as time goes on. And we've even seen that we did a story, Fox News did a story, actually came down to NOAA and did a little expose about there, and a program Gosnell down in the Cape, as well as a physician from Mass General, just in terms of the amount of alcohol that's being consumed during the COVID period of time, that level and the amount of emergency room visits and the amount of medical conditions that are coming in related to that has increased during COVID. Just right now, we're starting to see it go down a little bit, but there was the recognition that has really increased because, again, it's about the isolation and
Right.
people being not with other people, not necessarily having to go to work. People, again, even the mask. I was talking to a gentleman, it's like, again, the throes of it is like, I'm going to work and I'm intoxicated. And it's like, that is not, that's something that's a concern. So it's, again, what you're doing is you're telling us so that let's slow down. But it's really sort of the COVID piece is sort of added to that. It's isolation. It's being able to be hidden. Nobody necessarily knows it. And that becomes a huge issue. But I think we're starting to see it reel back a little bit. I think once the recognition is there, and being able to sort of intervene with those folks, again, they have to be able to sort of say something and talk about it and be able to communicate that. So
Yeah, I know. I mean, the bars have been closed, so the liquor stores are doing a heck of a business. But now what are they doing? Taking home drinking alone, and that's worse, especially if you're an alcoholic.
absolutely. And I think it's the same thing with the drug addiction. And for younger folks,
Yeah.
it becomes the vaping, which is a whole new thing. It's like, it's
Yeah.
not my generation, but again, that's a huge thing for young adults and adolescents. It's another gateway entry into, might have been smoking or cigarettes or smoking marijuana or whatever, but it's a new gateway, and that's increased because kids are more isolated themselves. They're
Yeah.
sort of like being, doing schoolwork remotely, and it's like, again, there's more of that isolation piece, and it's like, I just need to have a release in some way. So again, it's really around the coping skills and being able to develop new coping skills and to have coping skills so you don't have to rely on those kinds of things. So I think that's a lot of education that we have to do and provide for kids, adults, across the board. So.
Are you seeing more drugs are more available now, and especially now marijuana is legal,
Absolutely.
and the number of places you can buy it now is becoming a big problem because of that?
I don't know if I think the problem's always been there. I remember back a number of years ago when I was working with teens or teenagers around marijuana, and it was like, part of me sort of said, legalize it because one, it will be regulated. What I'm
Right.
seeing here is a lot of things that are happening that the illegal activity, the drug deals, there might be some level I'm not made a final decision on it yet in terms of me personally, but the fact is, it's like, you're taxing it, you're doing this, it's like it's becoming something else where it becomes big business. Is it saving lives? Is it not? Is it sort of helping people? Because I think the other piece about recovery, and I think that's something to be said, is, is somebody not in recovery? They're not using heroin. They're not using opiates.
Right.
But they start using CBD and they start using marijuana. Is that not recovery? Is that not a better place than what it was of what they were doing when they were sort of chasing a high in the
Right.
addiction? So it's like a harm reduction model. And again, I think we have a long way to go in terms of looking at that, but it's something to consider. It's like, I'm not sort of endorsing it, and I'll tell everybody, I'm not endorsing somebody using marijuana. I just won't.
I think it's better that it's legal and you can get it. It's a safer one. It's not contaminated with, and they do contaminate.
Oh, absolutely.
The stuff on the streets contaminated. But it goes back to like prohibition. When you had prohibition, you had people making illegal alcohol. It wasn't like alcohol disappeared. In a lot of cases, you got poison stuff. And you're not seeing that. Now, when they came legal again, they went back to getting it manufactured properly and things like that. So, you're getting safer, and it's always going to be there. You can't eliminate something.
Correct.
It's always gonna be there.
It's something that's not. I mean, how many times have we tried to control what that is and what's coming in the community? Now it's
Right.
legalized. It's there. It's monitored in
Yeah.
ways. It's regulated. So again, I'm not an advocate. I'm not saying people should do it. At the same point, for some people, you know what? That's their path of recovery. And I'll sort of
Right.
say that, and it's a really different way of thinking about it. I've certainly seen people that have had opiate addiction, alcohol addiction, marijuana, and you know what? They'll slowly eliminate. It's like, I'm not doing the opiates, I'm not drinking, I am smoking,
Yep.
I'm doing marijuana, and then eventually they're not doing that either. And it
Right.
becomes a slower process, and you just didn't realize, because they able to knock out the opiates, the alcohol, they become functional, they build up their self-esteem, they're doing other kinds of things, they're working on other kinds of, employment and activities and hobbies, that there becomes no room for the marijuana.
Right.
It's like, which is like, it's a slower process, but who's to say that's not a right process for them? Because it's sort of like cut it. They've been able to do it, and they've been successful in that, and it's been nice to see. Because again, 10 years ago, I probably would have had a different conversation about that, and it was like, no, absolutely, you can't do anything. But now it's like, wait a second, there's something that's here that sort of is working for some people. And again, I want to tell everyone, I'm not advocating for people to do that, but I'm sort of saying it's like the pathway to recovery is different for every individual. And it's not a cookie cutter type of situation that folks can sort of say, this is the way it is, stop, period, and that's the over. It's like it might have to be in
Yeah,
different
I think
ways.
it's human nature that we have to have something that, you might call it addicted to, but it could be a hobby, it could be a job, it could be, you have to have something that keeps your mind going. People can be addicted to television. It's a lot of different things. I mean,
Video games are.
I'm 73 years old and I keep working. I love selling. I mean, I work in sales. I work in radio sales now. But I want to keep going. And I think that we find everything. I think it's good that we can have something. Some people need a relief of some sort.
Right, and I think there's different avenues, and it's very different for different.
Yeah.
And it's learning what those are, where there could be physical exercise,
Right, exactly.
nature, bike. I mean, whatever the case may be, in
Yeah.
terms of the different kinds of things that can be. And again, it's sort of, and that's a natural
Right.
mood enhancer in terms of the endorphins and
Right.
all those kinds of things. That sort of antidepressant. It's like, yeah, exercise, going to the gym.
Yeah.
For sure, is definitely a sort of, and you see that, and again, you have to be, again, balancing everything out. It's sort of like, you don't want to be so that you're so much into the gym or so much in the exercise that you neglect other responsibilities, like with any addiction. You
Right,
don't want to necessarily
exactly, yes.
neglect what your responsibilities are, but you have to sort of take care of yourself, take care of your family, do those kinds of things. But it's finding that balance and knowing what a healthy balance is.
And so anyway, we'll get more into what your people do. How do you find your clients? Do they come into you, or do you go out and
Well, I
see
think
them?
there's a variety of ways. I mean, Family Continuity, again, has an outpatient mental health clinic and substance abuse clinic. So all of our major insurance companies sort of we're paneled for them. So if they have insurance, or including Mass Health, they can come in terms of being able to sort of see a clinician or a therapist. And so we get a lot of referrals from insurance companies, but also our physicians, our local physicians, our school departments, the police departments, in terms of our referral base. And I think it's also word of mouth. I mean, that sort of happens. And sort of like, and I think I even said that in the phone conversation. You say, oh, we can increase business. We don't need to increase business. We're there to help and assist people,
Yeah.
but it's like there's more. The demand is higher than what the workforce is, and that's not
Wow.
unusual in this field across the state. If you look at community health assessments that are done by all the regional hospitals, like Milford Regional, it's like mental health, substance use are big components of what's needed in the community, and it's just not enough providers to provide that service. So that's another piece to it. So the demand is there. The workforce isn't. That's probably got to, again, as time goes change. I know that the state has outlined some new initiatives that sort of going to make it more accessible for folks to sort of get, because there's definitely more of a demand than there is the ability to
Well,
provide.
what I'm wondering about, do people know they want to do this? I mean, is it one day the bulb goes off and say, look, I got to do something?
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, you can have people that have an addiction and they'll just keep going.
So right, it's like sometimes people will call like I need something, and then you know what? It's terrible to call someplace and sort of say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we have a 6-week waiting list,"
Right.
because it's
That's the worst thing.
that's
that
the
can happen.
worst thing that happens, but it happens across the state, all over the place.
Yeah,
It's just it's a given.
They finally woke up and realized they need some help,
Absolutely.
and if you don't take care of them right away, they're going to
Right.
forget about
and
it.
we sort of see that too. If we sort of can assign a clinician to a person that's within the next 48 hours after someone calls, higher rate of compliance. And you know what? This is one thing that COVID has done well for us is the ability of telehealth, because we can move quicker. It's like they don't have to come to the office, and we don't have to sort of schedule it out. We can sort of do it a little bit quicker. So that's one thing that sort of helps to access services much more quickly. And I think the whole thing is about access. That's why we have clinicians in the schools now. That's why we have, again, it's not about going through like, okay, the light bulb goes off and I need to call because then you're on the waiting list. Like, we want to be able to get those people before they even have to get to that point. It's like somebody's already saying, you know what, call these folks. We can get them in, and we can. There's other things that we can do before having a therapist that's sitting in front of you. You can have a recovery coach that's been through it. We can have other kinds of services that aren't just the typical what people think of as in terms of seeing a therapist or a counselor. There's other kinds of things, and I think the schools have done great with that. The police department's done great with that.
Right.
I think it's premature, but I mean, we're working with 6 police departments in the area. When they go on a mental health call or a substance use call, there's an automatic liaison for each department that sort of connects with us. So sort of we can do outreach, whether it's a recovery coach or an outreach worker, a social worker, to sort of be able to connect with those families. And we're hoping to do something a little bit more embedded within the police department. We're hoping to have a clinician that's going to be embedded in the police, rotating inside the police departments versus being at family continuity. They'll be at Northbridge, Uxbridge, Millville, Blackstone, at the police departments, being able to do that, because I think that would be a great resource.
We've heard about defunding the police, and in some places they say, well, instead of sending a police officer, we're going to send a social worker. That's not what you're talking about doing.
No, we're not talking about doing that, because basically our partner, well, I think we're partnering with the police department to sort of work with them.
You go
And
with the officer.
we go with the officer, and it's like we're not going to just send somebody out, because that's not a wise. Again,
Right.
The police department is around safety and community service
Yeah.
and those kinds of protecting the community. I think this is when an officer goes and encounters, and I can think of numerous ones where they encounter a person that's experiencing suicidal thought, like actively suicidal,
Yep.
actively hallucinating, and what's the police department supposed to do with that?
Right.
Exactly. We section them, they go off to the hospital, and then they sort of sit over there, and we don't know, and then 2 days later they're back home, and the police department's like, what happened?
Yeah, and nothing was corrected.
Exactly. So I think what we're doing now is with our current program is that they go out in the calls, they refer to us, and then we get involved, and we follow up the family. If we need to go out with the police officer, we'll go out to the police officer, meet the family, we work with them, we get them engaged, and it's a free service. It's a service that's paid for by the Commonwealth. We have a contract with the Department of Mental Health through the town of Northbridge, actually. Wally Wartrell has been a champion of this program in terms of being able to really work with us and the Department of Mental Health and being able to provide that kind of service. So we're following people for several weeks after that. So it's not like they go and we don't know what happened. We're sort of following up on that. And now we have a new component of it where it's a little bit more entailed, where we're actually going out with the police department. If we know it's a mental health call, that we're gonna working on that in terms of having a clinician go there. So guess what? They don't have to get transported by ambulance all the way over to Milford. That we can do the evaluation and get things set up. So it's like it's going to save money on the police department. It's going to save money on the hospital, and it doesn't have the community member sitting in a hospital for 3 days waiting for something to happen.
Right, which probably is worse for them.
Absolutely. So
Your environment that you're in, your home environment, is where you really should be to help to correct the situation.
and that one's a little premature. We're working on that. Uxbridge chief is really working and is championing that, whereas Wally's really championing this program where we're able to sort of go out and provide the support for families, no matter what it is, substance use, mental health. They've lost one to an overdose. We're actually working with them and sort of being able to continue services for a period of time, making sure they're connected with the folks that they need to be connected with. Where the other one is like they can respond, a fatal car accident.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a young officer that has to go with a family. It's like, wouldn't it be nice to have a clinician that sort of goes out and does that with the police officer and not be.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be a tough job for
Right, absolutely.
a young officer to do.
And the fact is they're awesome, and we've had a really good program with the 6 communities that we work with, and being able to sort of provide that service, and people recognize it.
I said, well, I don't think people realize that you're doing all this because, like I said, I had no awareness of it.
And I think it's slowly coming out. We had a recent, and I will not put their name out there, but people are sort of becoming aware of it, and they're like, that's a great thing. This is as important as, and this is what she said, she goes, this is as important as building a new school.
Yeah.
Because it's like, basically you're providing it's a safe community. And it's
Yes.
like, you're investing in the community, you're making it a better place. You don't want to have the police keep going to the same place. This is an investment in our community. This is a good thing. So it is starting to get out there a little bit in terms of sort of the recognition of what that is and what that means. So it is, I guess maybe we need to toot our horn a little bit.
Right.
And I think some people are going to do that.
Well, that's why I'm glad we have you on tonight to get the word out.
Because I think that's the part that, in my field as a nonprofit human service agency, we don't have a marketing team. We don't have people out there sort of doing that kind of, like, we're bare bones, grassroots, trying to make it work. And, on a shoestring budget, and insurance the way it is, and healthcare the way it is, it's a tough
Right.
business. So we don't have that kind of clout in terms of that robust marketing piece. So it's again, I think when I hear things like that, when somebody from the community sort of is aware of it, becomes aware of it, and they sort of like, I want to support this, that's awesome.
Yeah, because you take volunteers on.
We do take volunteers on. I mean, I have some stories of volunteers where we had, I think the No One Walks Alone program. I think that
Yep.
that one we had. We have a young man, and he'll kill me for bringing, but he grew up in town. He went to Northbridge schools, was involved in sports. Addiction found him, for sure. And in terms, and he was able to sort of really work with that and overcome that. He was somebody that received our services, and now is a person that provides them. And recently we did a class. Every year we do a class to the Northbridge High School for their AP psychology class, their psych class, their law justice class. Mr. Finkel, the history, he does a great job of sort of enlisting people from the community to sort of come to his class and speak. And I had this, young man. He's not young anymore. But he came, and he was a Northbridge graduate. And
Yep.
he went to Northbridge schools and was an athlete, and what addiction did to him, and was able to sort of talk a little bit about his life experience and what it's done for him in terms of the field. Because he's the students that are looking at, do I want to go in the field? And this is, during the pandemic, I said, this would be a great opportunity for him to sort of speak, because I know the kids, and vaping is a huge thing right now.
Right.
So I think him being a person that's sort of more relatable than an old man like me, he's sort of going out and sort of talking to folks, and I think that's great. And I think, so definitely, I think volunteers, he started as a volunteer. We had the first No One Walks Alone. We did a walk through town, started in Town Common, went to the police department. That was
Yes.
back a couple of years ago. Then COVID hit for our second one, so we had to do it virtually. But it was again, it was like, that was we was led down the street by
I do remember that.
a police on bicycles leading the way, and it was a great. We had all our state reps there. It was a wonderful thing. We were looking forward to number 2, and number 2 COVID came, and it was like, so we did it a little bit virtually. But you know what? Police department sent representatives to our site. They did video.
Are you considered doing it again this year?
Every year. Absolutely every year. Every year in
But you won't
September.
have to do it virtual this year.
No, I hope not. It's like
Well, things are opening up.
I think so. I think that's going to be, and again, for the folks that are in recovery, it's like, that's the biggest thing. It's about connection with people, and that's a group that loves to give to the community. They want to give back. So
Yeah.
they've been really sort of. It's not only about, we've been in recovery. We've been through this. They're doing the piece of bread. We sponsor that. They go and they serve the dinners and doing that kind of work. They're working with. We send one over to Tri River Health Center that does a group over there. So again, they want to give back. So it's not necessarily about we're in need. It's more of like they want to provide and they want other
Right.
people to share and know what they've been through for it to help them.
You work with the homeless shelter?
We have done that as well. As a matter of fact, Northbridge Coalition, which is, again, I was working with way back when with Bill Hodgmans from the Pleasant Street Church.
Yep.
We started that after a couple of tragic events here in town. It was a young man that completed suicide, along with a accidental shooting on East Street of a young man. And that's sort of like we realized that there's more for these young people that we need to really look at, and that's where the
Yep.
Northbridge Coalition, which was the school, the church services, the interfaith community, really got together and really sort of worked at sort of providing some, community events, and that's sort of gone on. It's died down a little bit because I think all the people that were really doing it have full-time jobs. It's like, how do we keep this going and keep this up? But it still continues. We have the community center, we have Open Sky, we have the faith community, we have the school. So everyone's still involved in that. It's just not at as large a scale. And I hate to say that. I don't want a crisis to occur that builds that back up. But they work on a lot of great projects in terms of again, whether it's working with the elderly or working with other folks, and again, that volunteer spirit to sort of get folks to sort of be involved in their community.
Because a lot of the homeless, a lot of times it's an addiction problem, self-esteem problem. And they don't need to be homeless, but in some cases, they want to be because of that.
Oh, and you know what? When we opened up the first, again, we call it the Blackstone Valley Connector, which is our program that's connected with the police departments. The thing that came up was the police departments referring to homeless. It was homeless individuals that were sort of coming. And I remember Jeannie, we had a panel at the high school one day with community members, including Jeannie, that was there. And we had all the state reps and so forth that were there. It was like, the issue is there. The homelessness is there. There's like,
Right.
all of a sudden the leaves fall and it's like, there's somebody in the tent in the back. And you had no realization of what that is. And what you had was a lot of really great people in our community that sort of trying to help them. But guess what? Community A didn't know what Community B was doing. And there really needed to be that coordinated effort because everyone's giving something to somebody else, and it's like, if that person's got 8 different people giving to them, and it really, what it needs to be is really supporting them. We've had people get jobs. We've had folks that have been the community has really done that, and sort of like helping people. But it's like a coordinated effort versus everyone's doing something, and it's really everyone's doing the same thing, and it's like you're getting nowhere. If you took all that funding that you just supported this person, you could have done something really much better. So,
Do you find in some cases, we had that homeless man that was up and down 122. I haven't seen him now in a while. He must have moved on to somewhere. But I understood that people tried to help him. He didn't want any part of it.
absolutely, he didn't. And it's like, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I might have seen him in another community, another town over. But it's like, it's true. I mean, even when we did our first, it felt awful. We were doing our first walk. No one
Yep.
walks alone, and we're walking past them, and we're like, everyone's like trying to. He didn't want that at that point in time. And again, it's around. I think for an individual, it's somebody that's really going to have to meet with him at his level in terms of sort of being able to sort of engage with that. And I think people did attempt to do that, and I think it's like he didn't want that. At this point in time, but the message is there are people that will do that and provide for that, and if he can get that message, one of these days it's going to click. Because my understanding, he's also a vet
Yes,
as well.
I understand that as well, yeah.
And I
For
think
some reason, he just didn't want anybody to help him. Look, this is what I want. He would accept a donation from you, but he'd just leave me alone. And I think that there might be a mental illness problem
absolutely
there. And especially with a vet, who knows what he went through.
right, absolutely. So it's like he's and who knows what will click for him at one time. But I think
Yep.
as long as people sort of support, and I think I heard people sort of saying, "Oh, there's a vet." That there was a compassion piece that was there that really people were concerned about it, but he wasn't willing to.
There's a lot of compassion in this community. It shows, and we have the food banks run by the church, the council of churches, and what you do. And there's a lot of stuff going on and people don't see it because it's done quietly. Nobody's names are put out there. We don't put in the paper that, well, we're helping this and this one. No, we just do it quietly and don't embarrass anyone. But like I say, and people have to know that you're available to be able to get in there. That's the only thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, again, we have, I mean, you know, I would love it to be, and I think the way that the state is going into supporting mental health clinics is going to be a much more open door.
Yep.
Piece of it is like it's not, because right now it's like it's difficult. I mean, I'll say it. I'm in the field. It's hard to get the services because your insurance or the wait list, and there's not the providers, and it's really tough. And I feel for that, and I hate to hear that because as a person that's sort of running involved in running an organization, it's horrible. But there's limitations of what we can do, and I think that that's the piece that I think there's going to be a new model where it's like it's not so insurance based. It's like it's going to be an open forum. It's like people can walk in and sort of get the services that they need and sort of be able to, and that's going to be over time. And I think when you have things with the police departments and the schools, it's going to evolve.
But in the end, it actually saves money.
Which is it does. It really truly does. It's like, I mean,
I
don't
say
you
that
want your
about
guidance counselor and your school teacher to be dealing with teaching the students and preparing kids for college versus the emergency crisis that they're having to deal with around a mental health issue or something like that?
Right.
You want somebody else to be able to handle that. Same with your police. It's like they're there to protect their community. They're supposed to go after the bad guys.
Right.
You know? And I think they do a great job of being compassionate. And they'll bring people in. It's like,
But
this guy's living in the
They
in
should
the
be out
woods.
there solving crimes.
Right. And they'll bring people in. It's like, can you do something with, he's been out, it's cold, and he can't get to the shelter until 5 o'clock. So we have different things that we can do to sort of help those folks. And
But like insurance companies, I mean, medical insurance is unbelievable. They could pay a little something and probably save in the long run from the person being hospitalized, but they won't do it.
Right. And the bottom line is, I'm going to say, when I say there's a workforce issue, it's not a well-paying job. So people aren't flocking to go into this field. So I think that's another piece to the whole, unless you're sort of the
you
worried
go
well.
out and you get a 4 or 6 year degree in social work, and you're not going to make a heck of a lot of money.
No, you're not.
It doesn't really pay that much.
No. And so they do it for a couple of years, and it's like, because it's like they followed their dream, and it's like, realize, I can't support my family with this.
Right.
So it becomes...
Plus work 100 hours a week,
Right.
because, in social work, it's 24 hours a day. You never know when you're going to have to go out.
So it becomes, that's the piece of, so I think a lot of it, you have a lot of part-time people that are doing it because they have the credentials, they've done that, they can provide that, but it's like, it's not the workforce.
They're not the main breadwinner in the family.
Exactly.
They can afford to do it.
Exactly. So, and that's what our workforce is. So it becomes very difficult, and you have people that get out of graduate school, they got their master's degree, and they sort of get their, 2 years, you have to be apprentice for 2 years before you have an independent license. So they stick with us and they get that, and they stick on, out of their compassion, they stay on a little bit longer, but it's like eventually they have to move on because they can't do it.
You got to get a job that pays.
Yeah, absolutely. So that becomes the difficult piece, and I think that's got to eventually get recognized as sort of it's an embarrassment in some ways of what we offer people with a master's degree, that have student
and
loans.
I say, if you can save someone, get them back on the right track, it's going to actually save money in the long run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? It doesn't need to be always the person with a master's degree. Like I said,
Right.
we have recovery coaches who have lived it.
Yeah.
And that's, now the insurance company is starting to recognize it because they have much more success with those with addiction than somebody with a master. It doesn't really matter if you have a master's degree. They've been there. They know it, and they can engage it, and they can support them and get them to a therapist if they want. Because it's like, therapist is just like, it's not going to go anywhere until the person really wants it. But a recovery coach can really encourage them and sort of support them in doing that, and that piece of it, which is, again, I think it's and I have to sort of say, if I get political, Governor Baker's done a really good job of really supporting recovery coaches in terms of what they're doing and the work that they're doing. So I think that's a big thing that sort of like hasn't been there before. So I think it's...
Well, I think he recognized, that probably goes back to his days working for insurance and realizing that this makes more sense. And in the end, addiction costs insurance companies tremendous amounts of money.
And it costs employers.
Yes.
It's like, again, it's like they're going to work, loss of
Oh, I know, yeah,
so I think,
absolutely. I mean, people missing work because of their addiction. Yeah, I mean, and that's all kinds of addictions. Being high while they're working.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think it's I think we got to look at it in a very different lens. It's like it can't be all mental health professionals.
Right.
It really is. It takes
But there's another thing, people suffering from depression. It costs you, if you have an employee who's depressed, they're not giving you their all. And,
absolutely.
and it's worth it to have someone to take care of that and work with them and get them back on the right track. And depression comes from, not just from money problems, it can be from a lot of different things.
Right.
It can be from diet.
There's a whole bunch. I mean, I think
Yeah.
in the conversation you have with folks around depression is sort of like, I always view it as some of it's situational. It's about your circumstances that you're around. You don't medicate a circumstance.
Right.
Sometimes we over medicize things. And it's like, it's a circumstance. So you get support and you sort of work with it. And there's other people that really have sort of that medical piece to it or that chemical piece that there's a different depression. And sort of really teasing that out is like, you don't want to medicate a situation. That's
Well,
just.
that's another thing. I mean, have we brought on a problem with over-medicating kids in school?
I think there was a time I think we're sort of, I'm
We're
hoping.
getting out of it now.
I hope we're reeling it back. I mean, if I hear I believe in the diagnosis of ADHD. I sort of
Yeah.
understand it. I also know there's a lot of things you can do behaviorally with that doesn't require a medication.
Which is probably better because
Right, and there's other people that really require the medication. I think
Yeah.
medication is a place for medication. It's important for certain individuals. At the same point, you don't want to medicate a situation. I mean, it's
Right.
like a medication is not going to solve a family problem. It's not going to solve. It's really those are moving from house to house or whatever the case may be. Those are situations. That becomes more of that environmental kind of situation that you have to work with and problem solve. It's not a medication. That's where you don't want to over medicate. And so I think there's a balance, and I think we're seeing the reel back, and I think some conservativeness in terms of medication piece, and I think again, even with the opiate, I mean that's sort of where that started as
Yeah.
well. A lot of times in terms of medications that were being prescribed, and I think we're fortunate we have a child psychiatrist here that works with us. That's really very conservative, but she's good. And I think that she's not, it's not the first thing to do. It's not the first thing to try. There's other things you need to do to sort of work with folks around before you introduce a medication. At the same point, medication is really important for a lot of people. And,
Right.
and I don't want to say that that's not necessary. It is for many people, but in some situations, it's not about a situational
But
thing.
we get bombarded on TV with
Ads
commercials and you got a headache, take a couple aspirin. Why not just relax for a little while and meditate or something and get rid of it that way? I had an operation about a year ago, a hernia operation, and right after the surgeon gives me a prescription for an opioid. And I said, I really don't want to take this. He said, you're going to have pain. Well, I did. But instead I took Advil. I took a couple of them, and it made me feel lousy. And I told him I didn't feel right. And he says, "Oh, you'll have weird dreams and everything." I said, "Well, I don't want that." I says, "I think I'd rather I'll try to live with the pain as much as I can."
Right, and I think there's things I think they're much more aware of doing the Advil and Tylenol mixture and sort of like doing one off the other, so
Yeah.
you're not overdoing it. But it's like you can still have some positive effects in terms of relieving pain. But
Yeah.
again, it's like, there's certain things you can do around meditation. Yeah, you don't want. I mean, if you might need it, but don't give a 30-day supply with a refill.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because the pain lasts 3 or 4 days, but then hey, I felt great. I'm going to keep this up.
Right, and
Yeah.
and who knows who you are until you take that pill.
Right.
It's like, addiction runs in a lot of families, and we don't necessarily know what makes. I mean, there is that component that is there. You take it, and it's like some people become addicted, and some people don't. But it's like it's real, and to sort of not recognize the fact that it's like I could take a medicine. It's like, okay, makes me feel totally weird. I want nothing to do with it. Someone could say, it makes me feel weird, but I'm going to take more because I'm not feeling the pain. It's like it creates a problem, and we
Yeah.
have plenty of people who can speak to that. Their drug dealer was the guy with a prescription pad. It's like, and it's not, and I'm not saying that MDs are out there. It's like that is a product of what has occurred, and I think there's obviously recognition of that, and I think that we have to reel it back, and we have to be really mindful of what we're doing in terms of treatment.
Yeah, I feel, let's find out what's causing the pain instead of just covering it up.
Right.
The worst thing you do is cover it up.
Right, because it could be a solvable problem.
Right.
That you have to work it out, and you have to use your noggin and your community and your family and
Yeah.
sort of be able to sort of create problem solving at the same point as medicating. That's like, what are we really doing?
The same thing with, and this was big in the 50s, you get home, oh, I got to have a drink, it relaxes me. Instead of having a drink, why don't you just sit down and be quiet for an hour or so and see if that relaxes you.
It can be a lot of different things.
Yeah, because after a while, well, that drink relaxed me, I'll have another one. And the first thing you know, you're addicted.
And it could be physical activity. It
Yeah.
could be
Yeah,
going
there's so
for a
many
walk.
things you can do. Do some exercise. I mean, a lot of people find that relaxes them. Take a walk. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different, and I think again, it's looking at what is underneath it all, where's it all coming from, and what needs to be dealt with.
Right.
Because sometimes it's issues that don't require a medication. At the same time, there is a need for medication. People with high anxiety, folks that are sort of experiencing that becomes sort of something that's like obsessive thoughts. You can do when we work with people around behavioral thoughts and sort of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really around non-medication, but sometimes you need to have the medication piece.
Right, in some cases. But, like myself, I never wanted to get high where I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I want to be in control. I don't want to
Right.
like getting drunk and not knowing what you're doing.
And I think a lot today. I mean, I think there's another thing that we have to sort of recognize is a lot of drugs are not that mind altering. So when I know that somebody's going on a certain medication, I'm like, it's not what you think. So there's a
Right.
lot of good medication out there.
Yeah.
It's like if it's going to have you change something like that, that's a powerful drug.
Yes.
But there's something that's like 6 weeks, 7 weeks to get at a therapeutic level. And it really is sort of think of it as you can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps right now. This is going to help you get there, and then it's about a wean off. That's a different kind of model. That's a different kind of process, and it's not that powerful. So I think there's a family of antidepressants, the serotonin uptake and SRI. We're getting too technical here, but there's a certain group of medications that are
Yeah.
really helpful for that, and definitely don't want to negate that. But it's the same point. It's like being careful about what we do and asking questions and doing some research about
Right.
what you're doing. There's plenty of great folks out there that are providing treatment and medications and so forth. And there's, what you hear about this person over here and this person over here, and it's like, I know exactly what medication cocktail you're having because it's the same for the next person. And like, that's disturbing. And I think it's, again, doing your research and sort of understanding what you're medicating for and what the effects of it are.
Well, the thing is, if you have an antidepressant drug, the first if you need that to always be, to be out of a depression all the time, then you really got a problem.
Right, and sometimes there's folks that have this endogenous depression that's there, that's really a chemical piece that's
Yeah,
sort
you
of,
got to find out what's causing that.
right. You have to find out what's causing it. At the same point, there's a point where if they can't function, so you have to again balance that quality of life of like
Right.
what is it that I need to sort of get to a functioning level, and then you get to that functioning level, and then it's like the medication reels back in terms of what being able to sort of do, and then being able to function. At the same point, there's folks that need it for a long-term basis, and that's just the reality. I think it's the continuum. I don't think there's any one case that's the same as another person. So
Chemical imbalance somewhere.
absolutely. And
We're
so,
finding more and more about that, that the brain works on chemically as well as electrically.
yep. And I think it's going to be different for different individuals, and the medication serves a purpose for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and for a lot of people, it's like there's an over reliance on it. So I think it's really about finding, again, doing your research on the medication, doing your research on the provider that's prescribing it, and sort of understanding what it is.
Yeah.
Anxiety is like, you don't want to have a benzodiazepine right off the bat. It's a highly addictive medication, but there's folks that are out there doing it, and it's like, that's not going to help the problem.
Right.
So it's like, let's understand the anxiety. That's for like acute panic or something like that, that you have. So it's like, again, I think that it's being careful about that and understanding a little bit about the medications and who's prescribing it and what it does.
Okay, well, we're gonna be winding it down.
Holy
You-
mackerel.
you
It
know
went
how
really
fast the
quick.
hour goes?
And I said,
have
this
to
is
keep
for an
watching.
hour? How am I going to talk for an hour? You'll be surprised.
Oh, yeah. But you're located right on Church Street.
We are.
In the Pythian building.
The old Pythian building, and
Yeah.
No One Walks Alone is in 9 Spring Street,
On
which
9
is
Spring Street.
which is where Catholic Charities used to be as well.
You can use volunteers all the time.
Absolutely, we can use volunteers, again, about people getting to appointments, people getting connected with jobs or transportation to
Yeah.
meetings or medical appointments, all those kind. I know right now it's COVID, so we do a training program for volunteers, but we can always use volunteers.
And you're wide open, even though it's COVID. If someone needs some help, if you know someone that needs help, just stop in.
We have telehealth. You make a call. We'll sort of
Yep.
connect you with somebody that can do a telehealth. We have clinicians that are working from home, from the
Telehealth
office.
works on your phone, by the way.
It works on your phone.
If you don't
on
have a
your
computer,
Yep,
I
absolutely.
think everybody's got a phone now.
Right. And right now, they've widened everything. You can just, if somebody doesn't have a video camera or they don't have an iPhone, you can actually do telephone discussions right now. That's covered right now. It will go away at some point because it needs to be HIPAA compliant. And
Yeah.
we have different video call platforms, but it's a great way to access people that were not accessing mental health services before are accessing now because of telehealth. And I don't think we're going to go backwards because I think it's increased the ability to get connected. And sometimes you need it in person.
Of course, you take insurance,
We do take insurance.
but if they don't have any insurance, you'll still take people in.
But we have different variety of different things. What will work with people to get insurance?
Yeah.
We have again, No One Walks Alone. That's insurance blind. It doesn't
Right.
really matter. It's you come in and if your stuff,
No matter what your
if you
financial
want recovery,
situation is, you're
we're
going
going to help you.
Yeah.
If you're looking to get help around an addiction or a substance use problem, there's no insurance. We're insurance blind to that. So
Right.
that's something that we'll be able to provide. And again, we have great partners in the community, our schools, our police departments, our doctors' offices. I think it's been
Yeah, like I said, I don't think people realize how much you work with the police. And this is a great way of doing it because you solve the problem before it gets too big.
Right. So I appreciate the opportunity to sort of come on, and
This has been great.
so absolutely.
I
So
hope we get a lot of people out there who realize that what you're doing now, and maybe get some volunteers out of it.
volunteers, and again, just sort of knowing what we're doing out there. I mean, I think and even support and supporting our police department and our schools in terms of sort
What
of
a
what
great
they're.
way to improve your self-esteem by helping someone else.
Oh, there's no question, and
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to continued partnerships with the chamber, and
Yeah.
I think we have great community partners, so I think it's been a great experience, and I think we're only going to continue. So I think it's a
Great way to improve in the valley.
absolutely. So I think.
Okay.
No, I think that's again. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to sort of talk about family continuity and Noah, and we look forward to hearing folks from the community. So again, let us know what your needs are, and again, so how you can support us and how we can support each other, because I think it's definitely a community.
Oh, by
that
the way, you
works
got a
together.
website.
We do have a website, and do I know it by heart? But again, it's family continuity. I don't, and Noah has its own website as well as Facebook. So, and if you go into Noah, if you probably check No One Walks Alone and recovery, you're going to have a whole host of different kinds of things with Zoom meetings, support meetings. They're looking to get the horseshoes going out back, and they're raring to go.
Let's get through this COVID thing and get back to normal.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, well,
So
we've
thank
got to
you.
go now.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and we'll be back. We'll be seeing you next week. I guess it's going to be Unibank.